to the FanDuel quarterback analysis for Week 14. I'm Jason Gilbo, JGilbo11. With me is Spencer Limbach at Spencer_JL. You took a look at FanDuel quarterbacks for this week, cash game, GPP, and value. And probably not the most appealing week we've seen this season, but it's going to be an interesting one.
Yeah, there's a lot of mid-range options that you can make a case for each of these guys. It's definitely a week where you can take some shots in tournaments. There's no clear-cut must-plays. There's some that are a little better than the rest, but I mean, it really looks like there's about 6 or 7 quarterbacks that you could easily make a case for in cash games.
Yeah, certainly. And this first one here is a guy I'm on, Andrew Luck. I mean, coming off his best game of the season, basically over 3 quarters, and gets a Houston team at home, basically a playoff game here.
Yeah, and the Colts have the highest implied team total of any team this week, so you have to really like that. Playing at home, Andrew Luck has always been a lot better there. In a dome, I mean, this is the time of year you have to worry about weather in a lot of different parts of the country, so playing in a dome is an added bonus there. And even though the Texans ranked 8th overall in pass defense, they've really been slipping as of late. Injuries to J.J. Watt and Jadeveon Clowney really hurt that pass rush and just has kind of a trickle-down theory into the secondary there. So I really like Andrew Luck. I'm pairing him with T.Y. Hilton. Hilton has the 3rd best matchup advantage according to Pro Football Focus this week. So I think that's just a great combination for cash games, tournaments, just everywhere. So I like him. Maybe a little bit of Dante Moncrief. He's not as high of a priority as T.Y. Hilton. I'm off Dwayne Allen, even though he had 3 touchdowns last week. I just don't think the individual matchups there. I think that was kind of a fluke, and we can kind of all agree on that. So Andrew Luck, T.Y. Hilton, fire him up.
Yeah, I mean, Dwayne Allen had 2 basically blown coverage touchdowns. His 3rd touchdown catch was by far the most impressive, but I'm in agreement. I like Luck this week. And I know usually, whenever you talk about Luck in the past, it's always been a focus on the offensive line, kind of dictating whether you're GPP or cash, but you're not particularly worried this week. Right. Jameis Winston here, same price, gets another great matchup. I mean, you're looking at 2 of the top totals of the week with both these guys.
Right, and I think Winston will have a little bit lower of an ownership rate, just, going from name recognition. I don't think people have that trust level with him quite yet, putting him in the same category as Andrew Luck. But also a great matchup for him at home against the Saints. Great weather there in Tampa, as I'm sure you can attest to. So I like that. And the Tampa Bay Bucks actually are tied with the Colts for the highest implied team total. So, and you have to figure most of that production is going to funnel through Jameis Winston. As I mentioned earlier, T.Y. Hilton has the 3rd best matchup advantage according to Pro Football Focus this week. Can you guess who has the number 1 matchup advantage of all wide receivers this week?
I would guess that stud Mike Evans, who's just a mismatch.
It's Mike Evans, and New Orleans doesn't have anyone to cover him. So I think Winston to Mike Evans all day, that's just a great matchup. If you don't have exposure to Winston, if you want to go with Luck, T.Y. Hilton, get Mike Evans in there too. I think there's enough value to make that happen this week. So that's definitely a strategy I'm looking for.
Yeah, I definitely am too. And I mean, it's a high price. Obviously Winston's priced up a little bit more than usual, and Evans is, deservingly priced where he is. But as you pointed out, a lot of value this week. We were talking about value before the show. I mean, there's enough to kind of make all this stuff work. GPP quarterbacks, obviously Colin Kaepernick. I mean, I think we're going to get basically a recency bias ownership here coming off of last week's game, but kind of, poor weather, a mix of a Jordan Howard game. I mean, it didn't really favor him from the start.
Yeah, and I mean, you can just kind of throw that out the window, and I don't think it carries much weight coming into this week and moving forward. The 49ers return to San Francisco, much better weather, better matchup overall against the Jets team that was just embarrassed on Monday night. Really, that defense is kind of reeling as of late. And now they have a short week traveling across country to San Francisco, and I think Kaepernick's just going to get back on track. I mean, 25 fantasy points per game in 4 games leading up to that disaster at Chicago. I think he's back within that range this week. I'm hoping people are off of him after he burned them. Him and Vance McDonald, I really like that combination for GPPs.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, always that rushing upside. I mean, in terms of a points per dollar return, you can look at one of the better ones per week if Kaepernick can go off. Drew Brees here next, 8,700. On the other side of that Jameis Winston game, obviously there's always the talk of him on the road, but, he's definitely capable of a big upside game.
Yeah, and I'm hoping recency bias comes into play here, giving him a much lower ownership rate. That the Bucs are playing a little bit better on defense as of late. He's on the road. People usually like to target him at home, and he's a little more expensive than the other guys we talked about: Andrew Luck, Jameis Winston. So I think a combination of all those things will leave him with a lower ownership rate. And he's obviously still an elite play, the best fantasy quarterback, or one of the best fantasy quarterbacks of the season so far. So this could be a potential shootout. The Saints are going to go through Brees all day long. Pairing him with Michael Thomas, I think that's a good pick this week, and one that you can get lower exposure to than normal. So I really like that as kind of a leverage play in tournaments.
Yeah, and you talk about the weather here again, clear and 70 degrees. It's 66 here, so I mean it's a little nippy, but not too bad.
Don't even. I woke up at 15 degrees here in the Midwest, so
it's not bad. You got to throw on maybe a light sweatshirt to go out after 6, but not too bad.
Yeah, but t-shirt all the way up until that, as long as the sun's out.
Yeah, that's true. So, your value quarterback of the week, Carson Palmer, sticking with the Florida, sunshine on the road here at Miami.
That's the question. I'm kind of changing my tune a little bit as I see this because I'm paying a lot close attention to the weather report, and the forecast has kind of changed. They're expecting a little bit of wind and a little bit of light rain maybe. So 20-mile-an-hour winds, obviously that can change leading up to game time. So something to be aware of as we approach Sunday afternoon and lineup lock. But otherwise, Palmer has a great matchup here. He's really, really cheap on FanDuel. And I think the Cardinals can just move the ball at will against the Dolphins. 28th ranked pass defense. I think they can move it into the red zone, and Palmer can really capitalize on the opportunities. But this is just a classic example of monitoring the weather up until lineups lock. If the weather is a little bit sketchy there, I don't mind pivoting to Kirk Cousins. He's 7,600, another nice value play there on FanDuel. Going up against the Eagles. Eagles' pass defense has been all right. They were a lot better earlier in the season than they are right now. I mean, classic example last week against Cincinnati, they just got annihilated, especially in the deep passing game. I mean, that's where they've given up all their production. They're pretty solid in the intermediate routes, in the short routes. So I think that's where Kirk Cousins, Deshaun Jackson comes in. And Deshaun Jackson's going to be fired up going back to Philadelphia. So I really like that combination for tournaments, and it's one that, really provides a lot of value if you're making multiple lineups.
It's funny, because I was looking at Washington this week, and, I like guys like, Jameson Crowder, Deshaun Jackson. I don't mind Pierre Garçon either. But I wasn't really looking at Kirk Cousins as kind of using him this week. I think he is a good kind of pivot if weather kind of gets a little iffy in that Miami game.
Yeah, if you're making 5+ lineups, I think Kirk Cousins, Deshaun Jackson is just a really viable stack to put in one of those.
Yeah, definitely. A lot of upside. And he's going to be throwing the ball as well. So that's going to wrap things up with the FanDuel quarterback analysis for Week 14. If you want to check out Spencer's article, it is up on the site now, dailyfantasycafe.com. Be sure to head on over and check out the rest of our Week 14 content.